Chapter 11. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But forgetting the guy who started with nothing, now, Liu Bang was actually envious of others for once. Seriously? Someone starts out with a grandmaster, and they can still level a city by themselves. Song Dynasty, Zhao Kuanyin, despite wearing the emperor's yellow robes, felt like he didn't quite measure up. The Qin, right now, the entire Qin dynasty wasn't envying the Tang dynasty's luck like the Han and Ming dynasties were. Still, they were feeling pretty mixed up. Your Majesty, was the ninth prince really right? Yingyun had asked His Ninth Highness what he thought of Yuan Tiangang. The Ninth Highness's answer had been a bit out there, but Guy Nye had agreed with it. Even so, most people figured it was just the ninth prince shooting from the hip. Nobody really knew the truth. But now, seeing the images on the Tao Golden List, they were shocked to realize that, it was almost exactly as the ninth prince had said. Yuner, how could you be so sure beforehand that Yuan Tiangang was practicing some kind of special skill, that even Yingyun looked surprised. He glanced at Yingyun, his tone softening as he asked, how did you know, that was this really his lazy good-for-nothing son? Something just didn't add up. Just a guess. Yingyun rolled his eyes at Yingyun's question, answering casually, he knew he'd be exposed sooner or later on the Tao Golden List, but he could stall for a little while longer. Besides, explaining things was a pain. Really? Yingyun frowned, a little suspicious, looking at Yingyun's lack of interest, but then, remembering Yingyun's usual lazy behavior, Yingyun's expression darkened, and he consciously pushed down his doubts. He figured he was better off figuring out how to snag the other folks on the Tao Golden List than worrying about his slacker son. After all, just the fact that two people had been revealed on the Tiandao Golden List was enough to rock the whole country. So what were the first 8 really like? Boom! Just as Yingyun was hesitating, a roar suddenly echoed in the void. Then, the scene showing Yuan Tiangang slowly faded away, and in its place was a totally new scene. Where is this? Suddenly, everyone was hyped up across the country in countless dynasties. They watched the scene in the void like hawks, afraid of missing a single thing. After the wild story of the Tang dynasty picking up a grandmaster, even the smaller countries were getting excited. What if they had a grandmaster hanging around? They could make a play for power and grab a piece of the pie. Actually, even powerhouses like the 5 major countries weren't taking it easy, launching serious investigations. Daming, Zhu Yuanzhang, who just yawned and was about to call it a night, glanced at the Tao Golden List and blinked at the changes. Why did the scene look so familiar? What's that, Zhu Di? Without thinking, Zhu Yuanzhang glanced at his son, pointed to a corner of the picture, and asked, is that the moat next to the Forbidden City? Zhu Di, who'd been thinking his father was obsessed with finding a grandmaster, took a look, and then, he froze. It really did look like it. Could it be the 8th-ranked creature on the Peerless list was from their Ming dynasty? Zhu Di couldn't help getting pumped up, even with his calm personality. Was it finally the Ming dynasty's turn to win? I knew the Ming dynasty was huge. There had to be some masters hiding around. Zhu Yuanzhang perked up and started laughing, shaking off his previous gloom. Things were looking up. This time, Zhu Yuanzhang was on the rise. Quick! Order the genie guards to be on full alert. The second a powerful master shows up, I gotta meet them ASAP. Zhu Yuanzhang gave the order without any hesitation. Grandmaster. The Ming dynasty was finally getting some love, no way he was gonna miss this. Yes, Zhu Di nodded sharply and went to carry out the orders. Meanwhile, in the country, some of the countries near the Ming dynasty were catching glimpses of which countries were in the pictures in the void. They immediately sent strongmen to the Ming dynasty without a second thought. One purpose and one purpose only. Snag the grandmaster at all costs. Chapter 14, The Iron Courage Lord. The story behind the number 8 on the Peerless list, Heavenly Golden List, the scene continues, boom. As the picture cleared up, a rather impressive villa came into view. Hulong Villa. Everyone was stunned, seeing the picture clearly. The peerless creature this time was a bit different. hanging out in a villa. Could it be someone from the martial arts world? Hulong Villa, sounds vaguely familiar. In the Forbidden City, Zhu Yuanzhang, having just recovered from his excitement, frowned slightly, muttering, "Didn't you just mention it?" For some reason, he couldn't quite place it. "Father, have you forgotten? That's our distant relative, the iron-hearted divine Marquis Zhu Wuxi." Zhu Di had just sent the Jinyui to Hulong Villa and was about to report to Zhu Yuanzhang, but he casually reminded him, "You mentioned him before." Not long ago, the peerless list had dropped, and his father was bummed out that the Ming Dynasty had no masters, and he'd brought up the iron-hearted divine Marquis. "That's right. When the Ming Dynasty was founded, we agreed to build him a villa and handed it over to this Zhu Wuxi." Zhu Yuanzhang blinked, then remembered and nodded. "I saw he was doing all right in the martial arts world at the time, so I gave him a title. Looks like Zhu Wuxi's strength, ranked 8th on the peerless list, can't be ignored." Back when the Ming Dynasty was first getting started, it used some serious muscle to wipe out a bunch of separatist forces. But it was still getting worn down by the Qin and Yuan dynasties, trouble both inside and out. Back then, Zhu Yuanzhang had leaned on the power of his distant relative, making him a marquis and showering him with treasures. But Zhu Yuanzhang hadn't expected his distant relative to have reached the level of a grandmaster. And not just any grandmaster. "True." Zhu Di nodded, then frowned, looking at the words Hulong Villa on the screen, his expression turning serious. "But I haven't heard anything about Zhu Wuxi being that strong for years. Surpassing the likes of Gai Nye and Yuan Tiangang. Everyone knew the value of the Tiandao gold list at this point. At a minimum, you had to be a master to get on the list. And not just any master. Someone first-class like Gai Nye could take out 2 ordinary masters with 1 sword. He was practically a master in his own right. So how terrifying was someone ranked 8th on the peerless list? At this very moment, Hulong Villa. "Is that me?" The iron-hearted Marquis Zhu Wuxi slowly looked up at the picture on the Tiandao golden list, a hint of excitement flashing in his calm eyes. Gai Nye had been listed as a first-class strongman, and Zhu Wuxi knew he'd make the list for sure. But only 8th. That was a shocker. He'd been holding back for years, his strength peaking. But even with all that power, he was only 8th on the peerless list. Chapter 12. You are listening at novelfull.audio. "Humph." With a dismissive snort, Zhu Wuxi's face went blank again, silently waiting for the heavenly Tao's judgment. Above, countless images flashed, focusing on Zhu Wuxi. Then, the majestic voice of the heavenly Tao boomed across Zhezhou, reaching every living ear. 8th on the peerless list, Zhu Wuxi, the iron-hearted divine Marquis. Realm, Grandmaster. Achievement, battled the invulnerable Vajrabadi. As the voice faded, the images shifted, the previous scene dissolving into a new, strange one. Was that a snow-covered mountain? Moments later, a younger Zhu Wuxi, appearing to be in his 20s, materialized at the foot of the mountain. Zhezhou gasped, a flashback. After Yuan Tiangong's reveal, everyone had a basic understanding of the heavenly Tao golden list's power. It could see past and future. So, seeing a scene from the past wasn't a total shock. The real head-scratcher was, usually, the longer you cultivate, the stronger you get. How powerful was Zhu Wuxi back then? "Is this my past?" Zhu Wuxi, still impassive, was momentarily taken aback. He muttered to himself, almost inaudibly. Then, something seemed to click. He straightened up, a look of shock spreading across his face. Su Xin. Zhu Wuxi would never forget what came next. He was about to meet her. The love of his life. The woman he'd give everything for. And now, the heavenly Tao golden list was about to expose the deepest secret in his heart. Suddenly, the iron-hearted Marquis, a man forged of steel, felt a tremor of panic. He was genuinely at a loss, but, no matter his doubts, the heavenly Tao golden list played on. That year, a young, spirited Zhu Wuxi met a girl. Her name was Su Xin. The moment he saw her, he was captivated. She wasn't a knockout beauty, but she had a gentle warmth that put everyone at ease. Unfortunately, Su Xin was already in love. Her heart belonged to her sworn brother, Gu Santong. Jealousy began to fester in Zhu Wuxi's heart, and Gu Santong, obsessed with martial arts, seemed oblivious to Su Xian's feelings, fueling Zhu Wuxi's resentment. So, when Gu Santong faced a challenge from the 8 major sects, Zhu Wuxi intervened, slaughtering countless masters and framing Gu Santong for the carnage. He succeeded in winning Su Xian. All of Zhuzhou was in an uproar, stealing his brother's girl, framing him with lies. Zhu Wuxi looked like a complete villain, despised by everyone. Some, however, sighed that despite his villainy, Zhu Wuxi's love for Su Xian seemed genuine. Regardless of the opinions, the scene continued. Zhu Wuxi was about to face the greatest crisis of his life. Gu Santong had reached the pinnacle of power. The combined forces of the 8 major sects couldn't hurt him, but it did turn the entire martial world against him. A year later, Zhu Wuxi and Gu Santong met again. Their battle raged for 3 days and 3 nights. Then, capitalizing on Gu Santong's distraction, Zhu Wuxi unleashed a devastating palm strike that landed, on a figure draped in purple. Su Xian was there. The blow, enough to cripple even a grandmaster, instantly snuffed out her life, despair, helplessness. Even across the vast emptiness, Zhuzhou could feel the profound grief emanating from Zhu Wuxi. He'd planned everything, accounted for every possibility, except the death of the woman he loved most. What could be more heartbreaking? Chapter 15, The Lonely Godly Marquis. Defeated by love, silence fell across Zhuzhou. Many despised Zhu Wuxi's actions, but watching his raw sorrow, his anguish, they couldn't help but feel a twinge of empathy. The hero, alone. The thought resonated within everyone. Zhu Wuxi's past actions were undeniably selfish, yet executed with meticulous precision. He had deceived the entire martial world. He deserved the title of hero in his own right. Now, seeing this same man weeping over the woman he loved, it was undeniably moving. But it's almost over, someone murmured, shaking their head. Presumably, Su Xian's death drove Zhu Wuxi to achieve a breakthrough, finally reaching the Grandmaster level. Then, he founded Dragon Guard Villa, reaching the true pinnacle of his power. It made sense. Even many emperors thought so. Breaking through in the face of extreme joy or sorrow was a common trope in the martial world. Nothing unusual about it. This must be how Zhu Wuxi had finally achieved Grandmaster status. But, just as they were about to pat themselves on the back for their deduction, Zhu Wuxi pulled out a strange-looking bean and fed it to Su Xian. Then, he poured his life force into her, channeling true energy into her body. To everyone's astonishment, Su Xian, who had been pale and lifeless, actually started to regain color, to breathe again. However, the price was high. Zhu Wuxi's cultivation, which was on the verge of Grandmaster status, stagnated. Is that a Tianxiang bean? In the martial arts world, some well-informed individuals gasped, their faces etched with disbelief. The Tianxiang bean. Legend said that 3 of them could bring someone back from the dead. But most only knew of them through ancient texts. Rumor had it they were extinct, mythical. Yet, Zhu Wuxi possessed such a treasure. And he fed it to Su Xian without hesitation. 3 of those beans could not only revive the dead, but also grant eternal beauty and immortality. The desire of many. Zhu Wuxi gave it away so easily. Moreover, he sacrificed his chance at becoming a grandmaster. Was this infatuation? Or madness? Zhuzhou was speechless. They all agreed they wouldn't have had the capacity to do what he did. I will save you, no matter what. Unaware of the audience and their opinions, Zhu Wuxi in the scene simply held Su Xian close, then sealed her away in Tianshan. At the same time, he defeated his longtime nemesis, Gu Santong, and imprisoned him in another location. Then, Zhu Wuxi left Tianshan and began his ascent. Although he hadn't reached Grandmaster status due to the expenditure of his true energy, he was already incredibly powerful. He cultivated the star-absorbing art, the great shift of the universe, and other unmatched skills. Few could challenge him in the entire martial world. Eventually, he established the Dragon Guard Villa, with its heaven, earth, and other secret agents. Chapter 13. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhu, disregarding his own well-being, spent years training and finally achieved the level of a grandmaster. His power was truly terrifying. However, what shocked everyone in Kyushu was that despite his incredible strength, so much so that the Ming dynasty honored him as a marquis, calling him the god of Taiguan, Zhu never stopped searching for the Tianxiang cardamom. He endured countless humiliations and hardships, all to bring Su Xian back to life. He even considered overthrowing a dynasty to use the emperor's power to find it. But even a grandmaster is vulnerable against the might of an empire. Eventually, Zhu experienced betrayal from all sides, even his adopted children turned against him. Still, he found the Tianxiang cardamom and successfully resurrected Su Xian. Tragically, Zhu had reached the end of his rope and was killed at Hulong Villa. Even in his final battle, he was the strongest. He overwhelmed Du Zhan, who had become the Grandmaster's mole, and even nearly defeated the seemingly indestructible descendants of Gu Santong, but at the critical moment, history repeated itself. Just like 20 years before in Tian Shan, Su Xian took her own life. Without Su Xian, what's the point of being emperor? With overwhelming power, Zhu let out a desperate cry before being defeated by the descendants of Gu Santong and the spies he had trained, a complete defeat. The scene froze. Zhu's despairing scream still echoed in everyone's ears. Is this how it ends for me? A faint sigh drifted through Hulong Villa. Zhu stared into space, his face a mixture of shock, regret, and despair. The golden list of heaven reveals the past, present, and future. Nothing is hidden. Zhu wasn't surprised to see his fate reflected. After all, reaching grandmaster level requires immense will. He was tough as nails. Earlier, when he saw his future self finally acquiring the Tianxiang cardamom, Zhu had been genuinely happy, smiling like a kid. Even though he'd alienated everyone by then, but who cared? With Su Xian, he'd have everything. Yet, Zhu never imagined that in the end. Su Xian would choose that same path, just like in Tian Shan. No. This time, Zhu's despair was even greater. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong. Caught up in the moment, Zhu finally saw, from an outside perspective, how deeply he had been consumed by his obsession, youthful spirit, deeply in love. Scheming the world, finally the word love. Tai Guan Shenho, Zhu Wuwu. Ranked number 8 on the peerless list. Receives a blessing from heaven. The majestic voice of the Tiandao golden list resounded once more, a heaven-sent blessing. Suddenly, the land of Kyushu, which had grown quiet, erupted in excitement again. The last 2 heavenly blessings were more incredible than the other. What would the 8th reward be? Everyone in Zhuzhou forgot Zhu's tragic love story, and focused on the heavenly Dao gold list. Anticipation was in the air. Even if they couldn't receive the reward, they were eager to know what it was. It was a blessing from heaven. Chapter 16 Yingyun, if only he weren't such a slacker. I wonder what it will be this time. In the Qin, Yingyun sighed quietly, hope evident on his face. The 10th and 9th blessings on the peerless list were enough to drive anyone in Kyushu wild. What would this 8th one be? No idea. Guy Nye shook his head. Even after receiving a blessing, he didn't know. All he knew was that it was a force of incredible power. I bet it's something like a resurrection potion. A voice echoed, reaching everyone's ears. They turned toward the source of the sound, stunned. It was His Highness, the 9th Prince. Yingyun, leaning against the wall, spoke casually as if overhearing Yingyun and Guy Nye's conversation. Resurrection potion. Yingyun looked surprised. He knew Yingyun was intelligent, but his personality was too lazy. Still, his insights were often surprising. Despite being a rebellious son, Yingyun thought highly of Yingyun. Otherwise, he wouldn't care so much. His anger stemmed from Yingyun's lack of ambition. Oh? Yingyun asked, and the civil and military officials stared, curious. They remembered the 9th Prince's accurate prediction about Yuan Tiangang. Even if they thought it was luck, what if it wasn't? Everyone recognized the 9th Prince's intelligence. He was a genius. Yingyun was taken aback by the attention, a dark line forming on his face. He had been eavesdropping on Yingyun and Guy Nye and spoken without thinking. He was a time traveler with a cheat system. Of course, he had different insights about the heavenly Dao golden list than Yingyun. He hadn't expected so many people to care. These heaven-sent blessings seemed to address past regrets, like Guy Nye not reaching Grandmaster level, and Yuan Tiangong's weakness. Yingyun shook his head and explained. Zhu's biggest regret is Su Xian. So, I think this blessing will likely resurrect her. Anything else is a bonus. Silence. The Qin officials were silent. Was it really that simple? They had been too awestruck by the heavenly Tao golden list to think about it, but the ninth prince had opened their eyes. Guy Nye and Yuan Tiangong's blessings did address their regrets. Guy Nye's dream of becoming a sword Tao grandmaster, Yuan Tiangong's incredible strength, but his fragile life, that's right. Was this really the lazy prince? Everyone stared at Yingyun differently. The heavenly Tao's blessings had a pattern. But it was easy to miss. Everyone was too overwhelmed by the heavenly Tao golden list to notice the rules, but the ninth prince wasn't fooled. He saw right through it. His insight and observation were incredible. Yuner, if only you weren't such a slacker, Yingyun shook his head and sighed. Chapter 14. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This time, Yingyun's words echoed what everyone was thinking. If Yingyun hadn't been written off, with his intelligence, he would have definitely landed on those golden lists eventually, but now, it's too late. Even with his sharp mind, being labeled as a loser for so long has cost him any chance of recognition. What a shame. The officials shook their heads, lamenting the wasted potential. Even Sword Master Guy Nye looked at Yingyun, studying him intently before shaking his head. He once asked me to teach him swordsmanship. If he had stuck with it, he might have become another sword master. He sighed, having used his spiritual sense to carefully observe Yingyun, ruling out any hidden potential. Guy Nye, a master swordsman, would have detected any concealed strength unless Yingyun was vastly superior. This confirms that Yingyun is truly a lost cause. Well, hearing Guy Nye's words, the officials sighed again, their last glimmer of hope extinguished. If even the sword master had given up, there was no chance of a turnaround. Well. Yingyun's face darkened as he watched the officials wallowing in disappointment. He wanted to lash out, just because he had taken it easy for a while. Were they going to act like it was unforgivable? Besides, he was practically a god on earth. What could a mere sword master possibly see? He could crush them with a breath. That's it. Taking a deep breath and sticking to his strategy of laying low for as long as possible, Yingyun decided to swallow his pride. His strength was still growing, thanks to the system. Revealing it now would be a waste. Still, this golden list was impressive. Even knowing the past and future, he wondered what his future held after coming to Qin. Chapter 17. Grand Master. Kyushu shaken again. Heaven's blessing. 1. Resurrect any living being at will. Note, the body must be intact. 2. Upgrade any martial art to the Grand Master level. 3. Restore 20 years of life. Just as everyone in the 9 provinces speculated about the blessing, a majestic voice resonated in their ears. Boundless light emerged from the sky, carrying a supreme aura. Suddenly, in the Qin Dynasty, at Hulong Villa, Zhu Wu's body was bathed in golden light, his aging form subtly changing, restoring him to the young man he was 20 years ago at the foot of Tian Shan Mountain. Mysterious thoughts flashed through his mind, hinting that a simple gesture could break through the limits of his martial arts. That realm seemed to be called Grand Master. A whole new level. Zhu Wu shook his head. Before, he might have been excited by the prospect of being number 1 in the world, but now, he had no expectations. Su Xian was gone. Wait, he had another reward: resurrection. Resurrection? Zhu Wu was jolted out of his sadness, his face a mix of emotions. He could bring people back. He had almost driven himself mad searching for Tianxiang cardamom, a search that led to Su Xian's death. Now, he could resurrect her and retreat from the world with her. He could forget about everything, whether it was the ancient 3 links, or Hulong Villa. Boom. A new door opened in Zhu Wu's heart. Without hesitation, he channeled his energy towards Tian Shan Mountain. He knew the future, but he was willing to sacrifice everything for Su Xian. Kyushu was stunned. Whether it was the great dynasties like Qin, Ming, Han, and Tang, or small countries like the Turks and Xiongnu, everyone was in awe. A new realm had been revealed. The Grandmaster was already the pinnacle. Countless people spent their lives trying to reach that level, but how many? Succeeded. Most people reach the peak of first class, but never even glimpsed the master realm, and now, there was a realm above that? What was this Grand Master? De Qin. Grand Master, Gai Nye, have you ever heard of this realm? Yingyun looked at Gai Nye. It's a realm that only exists in legends. Gai Nye said solemnly. Beyond Grandmaster is the Great Grandmaster. The gap is even greater than between First Class and Grandmaster. But no great masters have ever appeared in Kyushu. So, it became a rumor. Gai Nye had heard of the Great Master, but only from incomplete ancient texts. There were almost no records of such strong people. Yingyun nodded, then glanced at Yingyun, who was yawning. Yingyun, what do you think about this? Yingyun felt that something was off with his son, but couldn't put his finger on it. His two previous guesses had come true. He wanted to know what his useless son would say. No idea, Yingyun yawned, waving his hand dismissively. Never heard of it. Right, when he broke through, he bypassed the Grandmaster level and went straight to becoming a god. He had never even heard of a great master. That's right. Yingyun was disappointed, but also not surprised. It would have been shocking if his loser son had known about the Grand Master. Collect all information about the Grand Master. I will check it myself. Yingyun ordered Meng Kuo to collect ancient texts and search for traces of the Great Master. Since the Heavenly Dao Golden List had manifested and Zongwu had been given a reward to reach the Grand Master level, there was definitely a real Great Master somewhere in Jojo, someone above the Grand Master. Yingyun needed to gather information and prepare a strategy. Chapter 15. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Get on it. Meng Kuo didn't hesitate, snapping orders and sending his men scrambling for intel. And you? Still sleeping? Yingyun shot a glare at a drowsy Yingyun, face twisting in irritation. Seriously? You're still sleeping? Get over to that gold list, pronto. Find anything and try to hide it. I'll lock you in solitary for 2 weeks. Think you can still wander off then? That was Yingyun's ultimatum. Another nap meant solitary. Yingyun felt helpless, but what could he do? He braced himself and squinted at the Taoist golden list in the sky. It wasn't just the Qin Dynasty, either. The whole of Jojo and countless dynasties were rocked by the sudden appearance of this Grand Master. In the Tang Dynasty. Find him. Li Shimin stood in the court, fixing his officials with a cold stare. I don't care how, I want everything you can dig up about this Grand Master. Furthermore. Li Shimin paused, softening his tone. He turned to a Taoist priest and bowed slightly. I must also ask the Imperial Master to divine some insight into this Grand Master for me. Your Majesty, rest easy. Yuan Tiangang, the Tang Dynasty's Imperial Master, chuckled and nodded confidently. The hexagrams have spoken. In the Han Dynasty. I will have this Grand Master. Lu Bang's face was shadowed with a hint of viciousness as he muttered the words, in the Ming Dynasty. Our Qin are really something else. Grand Master. Zhu Yuanzhang roared with laughter, completely ignoring the helpless look on Zhu Di's face. Every inch the commoner, not the emperor, he was practically jumping out of his skin. He didn't even know what a Grand Master was, but he knew it meant power. Chapter 18, Zhu Yuanzhang wails, where did the master go? Back to the Heavenly Golden List. The scenes continued to flash by. Zhu Wuwu, moving faster than he ever had in his life, returned to Tian Shan Mountain and found Su Xian's body, frozen in its secret place. Without hesitation, he used the heavenly blessing. Instantaneously, blinding light surged forth. Su Xian, rigid from years of freezing, began to flush with color. A warmth emanated from her mouth and nostrils. She's really alive. Across Jojo, while most were focused on the Grand Master, some were still riveted by the resurrection granted through the heavenly blessing. After all, some regrets lingered forever. Throughout Jojo, countless others had someone they'd regret losing for the rest of their lives, a relative, a lover, and now, witnessing the Golden List bringing someone back to life, they were shaken to their core. They might not have Zhu Rongli's monstrous strength, but the Heavenly Tao Golden ranking wasn't just a power ranking. Maybe, when other lists appeared, they'd get lucky and be included. Then, would they also receive such a blessing? This Heavenly Tao Golden list was new, but no one could deny its supreme power. It could reveal the past and the future, and even grant heavenly blessings. It was enough to drive anyone mad with longing. Wait! Zhu Wuwu's leaving. Suddenly, someone watching the gold list pointed at the screen. After Su Xian was resurrected, Zhu Wuwu was taking her away immediately. People were stunned and puzzled. The Heavenly Tao Golden list had just been revealed. Every dynasty in Jojo would pay any price to recruit Zhu Wu. Especially the Qin, Han, and Ming dynasties. The Ming, especially. He was practically in their backyard. The Jiniwei, the Ming secret police, were probably halfway to Hulong Villa by now. But the way things looked, Zhu Wuwu wasn't planning on going back. He must have seen the future. This Zhu Wuwu plans to live off the grid. In the Qin Dynasty, Yingyun watched the scene play out above him and sighed. For some reason, he felt a twinge of emotion. Zhu Wuwu was a hero in the truest sense of the word. And yet, he was willing to give it all up for a woman. That kind of devotion was incredible. And respectable. Few in Jojo could do the same. And for any dynasty but the Ming, Zhu Wuwu leaving was a good thing. After all, brave god Ho Zhu was a distant relative of the Ming dynasty's founding emperor. If Zhu Wuwu decided to throw his lot in with a country, it would be the Ming. But now that he had chosen to leave, other countries could breathe a sigh of relief. If the already powerful Ming dynasty suddenly had a grand master revolutionizing some field of expertise, all the other countries might as well pack it in. They might as well just surrender now. In the great Song dynasty, Zhao Kuanyin exhaled in relief, watching Zhu Wuwu's departure on the screen. The Song dynasty valued culture over military might. Their combat strength wasn't anything special. Even though they were a top dynasty, they still fell short of the Ming. If the iron-willed Zhu Wuwu had joined the Ming, Zhao Kuanyin wouldn't have been able to sleep, but Zhu Wuwu chose to leave, so he didn't have to worry anymore. Ah, if only the Song dynasty had a few grand masters of its own. That the thought crept into Zhao Kuanyin's mind. The Song dynasty's preference for scholarship over martial arts had led to a boom in literature and a decline in martial arts. Even their army's fighting ability was weaker than that of other top dynasties, let alone the super-strong individuals. But now, Zhao Kuanyin regretted it. If he hadn't relieved his generals of their power during that drinking party, maybe, the Song dynasty's fighting power would have grown to incredible heights. In the Han dynasty, even though Zhu Wuyang is powerful, we have to make sure the Ming dynasty doesn't find him. Or, he might be infiltrating Qinsong, leaving in plain sight, but secretly assisting the Ming. Liu Bang swept the court with a cold gaze. This needs to be investigated. That he remembered using the secretly attacking Qinsong strategy to blindside the powerful overlord Xiangyu, cripple him in one stroke, and seize the title of Supreme Dynasty. Now, Liu Bang suspected that Zhu Wuli was leaving, only to end up in the Ming. If that was the case, someone suspected of being a Grand Master would be a nightmare for any emperor. Understood. Zhang Liang, Xiao He, and the others didn't dare hesitate, raising their hands and responding with respect. In the Dayuan dynasty, and the Qin dynasty, the entire Jojo continent, because of Zhu Wuwu's actions, relaxed its tense muscles. He's gone. Good riddance. If he had really surrendered to the Ming dynasty, it would be game over for every smaller country. Everyone knew that Zhu Yuanzhang of the Ming dynasty was a brute. Who could survive if Zhu Wuwu assassinated his way through anyone who irritated him? But just when all of Jojo was celebrating, the atmosphere in the Ming dynasty had turned sour. Back in the Forbidden City. Chapter 16. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhu Yuanzhang was almost giddy, feeling like his struggles were finally paying off. He thought God was finally gifting the Ming dynasty a true master. And a relative, no less. Unbelievable. Old Zhu was grinning ear to ear. Even Zhu Di, usually on the receiving end of his father's scolding, was hearing his name, dear, in a tone of long-lost affection. It was almost heartwarming. But then he watched Zhu Wuwu leave Tianshan Mountain with Su Xian, vanishing from the Heavenly Dao Golden List screen. Old Zhu was bewildered, just like that. Isn't that a straight shot back to Hulong Villa? After a long pause, Zhu Yuanzhang finally managed to say it, his face etched with shock. This was old Zhu clinging to hope. Probably, maybe not, Zhu Di said, shaking his head grimly as he looked in the direction Zhu Wuwu had gone. With all the genie guards at Hulong Villa, by the time they got to Tianshan, it'd be too late. And if a master wanted to hide, who could find him? You idiot! Why didn't you think to station people at Tianshan beforehand? Zhu Yuanzhang exploded. He grabbed Zhu Di, shaking him roughly, and roared, "Move it! Get me every imperial guard we have. We have to find Zhu Wuwu." Yes, yes. After the shaking, Zhu Di touched his aching head and nodded, looking dejected. Then, he hurried off to give the orders. Damn it! After Zhu Di left, Zhu Yuanzhang looked up at the sky, tears welling in his eyes. After all that effort, he'd finally landed a grandmaster. And he just ran off. This was a joke. Chapter 19, The Seventh Wonder on the Peerless List. Coming soon. At that moment, Zhu ignored it and retreated into seclusion, making the entire Ming dynasty feel like weeping. It was maddening. Even the founding emperor, Zhu Yuanzhang, was finding the emotional roller coaster unbearable. God, were they playing him? You could practically hear old Zhu's despairing cries echoing near the Forbidden City. It was a truly tragic scene. But across all of Zhuzhou, Zhu Wuwu's departure wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Before, Gai Nye and Yuan Tiangang were limited to being grandmasters, this still made many dynasties extremely envious and almost went crazy with envy. However, in the face of war between dynasties and dynasties, it still cannot play a decisive role. And now, if there was another so-called grandmaster who completely surpassed the grandmaster in a certain field, the dynasty of the Ming dynasty will really be crazy. These emperors were always worried about what the already extremely powerful Ming dynasty would do. I'm afraid that within a few months, my dynasty will be annexed. In fact, even the Song dynasty, which was also the supreme dynasty, had to seriously think about this concern. Fortunately, Zhu Wuli chose to leave. Finally everyone is happy. Of course, the entire Zhuzhou continent has not completely relaxed because of this. You know, this is the 8th on the gold list. The 7th and 6th on the peerless list. Even more, what kind of existence can be ranked first on the peerless list? Grandmaster. Grandmaster. Still, there is something above and beyond. These are completely unknown. And only the unknown is the most terrifying thing. The Peerless List, number 7. In the Qin, Yingyun looked up at the fading Heavenly Dao Golden List, a grave expression on his face. He murmured, "Coming soon." Everyone around him was taken aback, instinctively looking towards the sky. Countless phantoms swirled on the Heavenly Dao Golden List, as if about to materialize again. They all knew the 7th wonder on the Peerless List was about to be revealed. I wonder which dynasty will get this one, Wang Jian sighed, a glint of anticipation in his old eyes. Gai Nye belonged to Great Qin. Yuan Tiangang was from the Tang dynasty. And Iron Guts divine Ho Zhu Wuwu, though active in the martial arts world, was heavily tied to the Ming dynasty. So which country would this powerful number 7 come from? The Han dynasty? The Song dynasty? Or some smaller power? It wasn't just the people of Great Qin who were waiting with bated breath. The entire Zhuzhou continent was silently watching the sky, number 7 on the peerless list. Everyone wanted to know what an existence who could outshine even Gai Nye, Yuan Tiangang, and Zhu Wuwu would look like. Whoosh! As if sensing their anticipation, the Heavenly Dao Golden List rippled, the screen gently swirling, revealing glimpses of mountains, rivers, and trees. Where is that? Looking at the scene on the list, the emperors of countless dynasties were stunned, their minds racing. They knew that unless luck was on their side, recruiting a wonder like this wouldn't be easy, but they couldn't suppress their desire. After all, even Zhu Wuwu, at number 8, had plunged the supreme dynasties into crisis. How terrifying would number 7 be? Han Dynasty. I have to get a strong one on this peerless list, no matter what. Lu Bang gritted his teeth, almost roaring, I don't care who it is. Land, beauties, titles, power, anything they want, I'll give it to them. Envy consumed him. Look at Great Qin. Gai Nye had instantly boosted the nation's strength to a new level. Then there was the Tang Dynasty, picking up a grandmaster for free. From now on, anyone with designs on Datong would have to think twice. The Turks, for example, who had caused so much trouble, wouldn't dare launch a major war as long as Yuan Tiangang was around. At most, they'd make some noise at the border and be ready to run at a moment's notice. Meanwhile, he was stuck enduring the pressure from the Xiongnu. Yes, sir. Military leaders like Fan Kuai, as well as counselors like Zhang Liang and Xiao He, bowed deeply, promising to do their utmost. Everyone knew that with the arrival of the Heavenly Dao Golden List, the once stable landscape of Jiuzhou was about to be completely reshaped. If you didn't get on the list, even a supreme dynasty like the Han Dynasty could be swept away by the tide of change. The most important thing now was to compete for the strong ones on this peerless list. And they couldn't afford to neglect the other lists either. Especially the Divine Army list. Alongside this peerless list, Song Dynasty, Zhao Kuangyin, clad in his yellow robe, issued almost the same orders as Lu Bang. To be honest, Zhao Kuangyin hadn't been too concerned about the peerless list before. He figured he was a supreme dynasty, after all. Even if he didn't value force as much, how much could one or two masters really change things? Against a real army, a master would eventually tire out. One person couldn't possibly defeat 10,000 soldiers. But after seeing the Iron Guts divine Ho Zhu Wu, Zhao Kuangyin no longer dared to underestimate the peerless list. Good lord! This was just number 8, and already they were talking about grandmasters. How strong would numbers 7, 6, or even number 1 be? Unthinkable. Chapter 17. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Alright. Zhao Kuangyin's words spurred the officials to immediate action. They bowed and rushed off to get things underway. Ming Dynasty. I'm furious. Zhu Yuanzhang watched Zhu Wuxi vanish, fighting back tears. Why'd the guy have to choose seclusion? Find him. The 8th one slipped through our fingers, but this 7th one, we have to get him. Old Zhu took a deep breath, glancing at Zhu Di who was trying to stay out of range. He muttered, I refuse to believe my luck is always this bad. Your son is on it. Zhu Di said. Then, he silently moved even farther away from Zhu Yuanzhang. He was genuinely afraid his father would take out his anger on him. That last whack still stung. A few more, and he'd be concussed. Tang Dynasty. Li Shimin ordered his men to find the list's top contenders, Yuan Dynasty, Qin Dynasty, even the Turks, Xiongnu, Tubo, and others. At that moment, the whole of Kyushu was in an uproar again. The target, the 7th strongest person on the peerless list. Chapter 20, Dongfang Bubi. The red-clothed figure is stunning. In the sky, the scene shifted, the mountains, rivers, and streams blurred. Finally, it settled on a cliff. Throughout Kyushu, countless people held their breath, eyes glued to the sky. They couldn't afford to miss a thing. After all, they had their ruler's orders. Find the peerless list figures ASAP, then, at all costs, recruit them. But Kyushu was immense. An average person couldn't cross it in a lifetime. Even a master would need decades to reach every corner, so, even though the heavenly image was fixed, no one knew where this cliff was. All they could do was guess. This 7th-ranked person seems to be a martial artist. In Daqin, Yingyun studied the image, pondering aloud, martial arts. Usually, that meant the major sects, the alliances between good and evil. A different world from the dynasty. The dynasty and the martial arts existed in separate spheres. The dynasties usually ignored internal martial arts disputes, and the martial arts didn't dare to challenge the dynasties. Especially supreme dynasties like Daqin, who stayed away. Sometimes, they would accept the dynasty's recognition, like Zhu Wuxi, after all, a master was formidable. But against thousands of soldiers, they'd be overwhelmed. If any of the 5 major countries was truly angered, their million-strong armies could raise the entire martial arts world. Of course, if pushed too far, the martial arts world would retaliate with targeted assassinations of generals and kings, a nightmare for any dynasty. Now, seeing the image in the sky, Yingyun recognized nothing from his dynasty's territories. It looked more like the martial arts world. He couldn't help muttering, hope flickering. If the peerless list figures came from the dynasties, like Yuan Tiangang, he'd be recruiting them instantly. But martial artists valued freedom and revenge. They had less loyalty to any dynasty. Still, better than trying to steal from the other major dynasties, right? Across Kyushu, many emperors had the same thought. It was easier than snatching from rival dynasties, surely. Why does that place look so familiar? Meanwhile, Yingyun wasn't thinking about Yingyun's ideas. He forced himself to focus on the sky, frowning. The cliff felt familiar, especially those hanging baskets, which looked like lifts. Wait! Isn't that Blackwood Cliff? Suddenly, it hit him. He was stunned. Blackwood Cliff, sun-moon sect, memories flooded back, making his face even stranger. If he was right, the 7th person on the list was, no. She was. Even tough Yingyun shuddered at the thought, not from fear, but disgust. If it was who he thought, the peerless list was about to get interesting. Dongfang Bubi. The name echoed in his mind, a legend. And linked to it was a martial arts manual and a catchy phrase. The Sunflower Manual. To master it, you had to castrate yourself first. Yunner, what's on your mind? Yingyun frowned, seeing Yingyun's odd expression. Why aren't you studying? Even if you can't grasp it all, learning from these peerless figures will definitely help you. Yingyun's disappointment flared again. He couldn't let the kid do whatever he wanted. He had to be stricter. Or else who knows how it will turn out. Help? Yingyun smirked at his cheap father's words. He glanced at the approaching cliff and the vague sun and moon characters and sighed, fine, I'll learn. Father, I think this expert is incredible. You should learn too. Yingyun lingered on the word learn. If he wasn't afraid of being exposed, he'd ask his father, that Sunflower Manual, you want me to study it too? It's a trap. Of course, Yingyun nodded, seeing nothing wrong with Yingyun's words. To be on that list, they have to be extraordinary. I'll study hard. Gainya, Yuan Tiangang, Zhu Wuxi, all of them were amazing. How much more amazing was the 7th-ranked person on the list? 9th Master, I agree. With your talent, studying these peerless figures might lead to a breakthrough. Gainya, quiet until now, spoke. After the 9th Master's guesses, Gainya sensed more than just lucky guesses. His intuition was exceptional. With training, he could become a pillar of the Qin Dynasty. Okay. Study together, Yingyun waved, glancing at the heavenly Tao golden list. He saw a red dress, and saw a figure emerge, faintly, and simply lie down. When the time comes, you go first. I'll follow along. Chapter 18. You are listening at novelfull.audio. These guys were about to get a front row seat to the biggest plot twist ever. It was gonna be epic. Yingyun and Gainya shot Yingyun confused looks, wondering what was up with him, but there wasn't time to dwell on it. Because a figure in red had just appeared on the screen, and just like that, the entire continent of Jojo was thunderstruck. The 7th strongest person on the peerless ranking was a woman. Chapter 21. Jojo holds its breath for a glimpse of a legendary woman. The scene in the sky shifted from a towering cliff to a private chamber. A woman in red stood with her back to the audience. Even without seeing her face, her breathtaking aura made it impossible to look away. Who would have thought? The 7th on the peerless ranking is actually a woman. Yingyun sighed softly, a hint of awe in his voice. To reach this level of mastery as a woman, she's truly a force to be reckoned with. It was no secret that martial arts favored men, but there were exceptions. but those who climbed above the Grand Master level were rare gems. The fact that this extraordinary woman had done it was astounding. Even an emperor like Yingyun couldn't help but admire her. Indeed, Yingyun nodded, breaking his usual silence. Women's meridians are inherently more delicate, making it easier to start martial arts training, but incredibly difficult to advance to the highest levels. Especially reaching the Grandmaster stage, it's almost impossible. To achieve this level of power, the sacrifices she must have made are beyond imagination, that even a sword master like himself was in awe. He doubted he could have achieved what she had, even at his peak. You said it, Yingyun, suddenly snapping out of his usual apathy, chimed in excitedly. Beyond imagination, now that the woman in red's back was displayed, he was certain that it was her from his memories. Seeing Yingyun and Yingyun's conversation, Yingyun couldn't hide his delight, he couldn't wait to see their faces when the truth finally dropped. Seeing the once indifferent Yingyun show some interest, Yingyun perked up, thinking his son had finally seen the light. A woman, Could it be that his son was a ladies' man after all? He recalled that Yingyun had brought back a stunningly beautiful maid from his travels, It all made sense now. But Yingyun wasn't mad. He was the emperor, and Yingyun was his successor. What's wrong with having a few women on the side? He could easily have 180 if he wanted. Looks like I've been neglecting things. It's time to find a suitable wife for this kid. Yingyun mused, realizing his son was already an adult and ready to settle down. Son, in a few days, I'll take you to meet the families of Xianying. Yingyun said casually, glancing at Yingyun. Oh. And what do you think of Li Shimon's daughter, what's her name? Changle? Got your eye on her? What? Yingyun was dumbfounded, trying to decipher Yingyun's intentions, visiting the families of Xianying. And Changle? He knew that Changle girl. He even tormented her a bit when he was in the Tang Dynasty. Wait a minute. Could it be that his past deeds had been exposed? Impossible. His dad didn't even know he went to the Tang Dynasty. For once, Yingyun had no idea what Yingyun was up to. Seeing Yingyun's confused expression, Yingyun's face darkened. Just as he was about to speak his mind, a sudden uproar erupted around him. Startled, he looked up. As the scene unfolded, the woman in red was about to turn around. Meanwhile, in the Great Han Dynasty. I wonder, what does this woman look like? Lu Bang gazed at the sky, a hint of yearning in his eyes. He was an emperor, but his own wife was too dominant. Any hint of him favoring other women and she'd go ballistic. Lu Bang was secretly frustrated. Even though he knew the Grandmaster was an untouchable figure, he couldn't help but fantasize. How wonderful it would be to have a woman like that. Your Majesty, I will find her for you. Fan Kuai thumped his chest, promising Lu Bang. Good. Lu Bang grinned, nodding in approval. You know me well. In the Daming Dynasty. Dear, do you know what to do? Zhu Yuanzhang glanced at Zhu Di, who was keeping his distance, his voice calm and even. Old Zhu was truly ruthless. Before losing sight of the Grandmaster, he might have entertained some fantasies about the woman, but after that incident, any illusion was crushed. Now, all Zhu Yuanzhang cared about was recruiting a strong contender from the peerless ranking to serve him. The rest was irrelevant. Yes, sire. Hearing Zhu Yuanzhang calling him dear, Zhu Di felt a chill run down his spine. He quickly raised his hands in salute. I will spare no effort to invite this warrior to our court. As soon as the peerless ranking appeared, he had ordered the best craftsmen and royal guards to locate and recruit these figures at any cost. But there was nothing he could do about the previous ones. One was the great Qin sword saint, and the other holed up in Chang'an. As for the Ming Dynasty fighter, he had vanished without a trace. It was hopeless. But now, Zhu Di was confident that with the genie way, he could find the one he was looking for. Blackwood Cliff. Blackwood Cliff. That was the name that flashed across the screen of the Heavenly Tao ranking, etched in Zhu Di's memory. That peerless woman resided in Blackwood Cliff. In the Song Dynasty, the entire continent of Jojo was once again in motion. If the arrival of the heavenly ranking had caught the dynasties off guard, they were now fully prepared. Blackwood Cliff. All the covert projects across Jojo were redirected. They had one sole purpose: find Blackwood Cliff. Those soldiers loyal to the dynasty, hidden within various sects of the martial arts world, were now using their skills to the fullest. They planned to gather at Blackwood Cliff. And at that very moment, the woman who had captivated Jojo on the heavenly Tao ranking was slowly turning around. Chapter 19. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dressed in red, captivating the world, that's the lasting impression the creatures of Kyushu had of the woman in that image. After all, few women ventured into martial arts, and even fewer reached such a transcendent level. Some, unstable to begin with, even started seeing this woman in red as their dream lover, powerful figures among them. So, when such a figure turned around, how could it not be a thrill? As the scene unfolded, the woman seemed to realize she was exposed on the heavenly Tao golden list and slowly turned around. Her movements were light and graceful. The side of her face gradually came into view, fueling countless fantasies. At that moment, the majestic voice of the heavenly Tao golden list echoed in the minds of all living beings in Jojo. 7th on the peerless list, Sun Moon Divine Cult, Dongfang Bubi. Realm, Grandmaster. The sun rises in the east, and I alone am undefeated. The sound was not loud, but it was earth-shattering. Instantly, countless dynasties in Kyushu were shaken. Undefeated? What a bold claim! Instead of listing achievements, the heavenly Tao golden list offered only those 8 words. Yet, they were more impressive than any display of power. The sun rises in the east, and I alone am undefeated. Such arrogance! Across all of Kyushu, who dared utter such a thing? The Qin Zhangtai Palace, looking at the image on the golden list, Yingyun sighed, the sun rises in the east, and I alone am undefeated. Such a woman is truly unmatched in beauty. Indeed, Yingyun agreed, nodding. To earn such a rating on the heavenly Tao golden list, she's no ordinary person. But, this is only number 7 on the peerless list. Yingyun's heart skipped a beat, surprised. He'd always believed his swordsmanship placed him among the strongest, if not the strongest. But reality had hit him hard. Besides himself, Yingyun had no desire to further address that everyone else was a grandmaster from the start. The problem was, each of them was more outlandish than the last. Yuan Tiangong's abilities had already frightened him with his terrifying strength and unpredictable divination skills. As for the Iron Blood Divine Marquis, after receiving his reward from the heavenly Tao golden list, he'd be on the cusp of reaching the grandmaster level. As for Yingyun, all he had was the title of grandmaster. Now, the number 7 on the peerless list arrived with the line, the sun rises in the east, and I alone am undefeated, almost numbing Yingyun. He even doubted if he, the so-called sword master, could last 3 moves against these people. Oh, nearby, watching Yingyun and Yingyun in their exchange, Yingyun curled his lip and sneered, disdain evident on his face. The East is undefeated. She's the true wild card. Just you wait. When she truly turns around, you'll see what real stunning beauty is. Ha! She's turned around already. Suddenly, Yingyun glanced at the sky and saw the scene changing. Dongfang Bubi, who'd been facing away, was finally turning around. Subconsciously, Yingyun closed his eyes. I can't watch. But unlike Yingyun's knowing avoidance, the other creatures of Jojo were excited, staring at the sky, transfixed. Finally, the moment they'd been waiting for, this unparalleled figure would reveal her face. In the image, Dongfang Bubi lowered her eyes and gently waved her hand as the hazy veil fell away, scattering to the side like a scene from a fairy tale. Her true appearance was finally revealed. At that moment, all of Kyushu fell silent, ready to appreciate this peerless beauty. But when they truly saw the face of Dongfang Bubi, they were stunned. What kind of woman is this? That thought flashed through the minds of countless creatures. It was a boudoir. Dongfang Bubi sat at a dressing table, wearing pink and white, hinting at a feminine charm. But it felt somewhat forced. The beautiful red dress had an extremely special style, neither male nor female, and its color was strange. Dongfang Bubi held an embroidery hoop in her left hand and an embroidery needle in her right, looking like she was embroidering. If she really were a woman, there'd be nothing wrong with it. Even a peerless warrior was entitled to a hobby, right? But the question remained, was this really a woman? Is this number 7 on the peerless list the leader of the cult? A strange voice echoed. It was high-pitched and yet coarse, like a man or a woman, sending shivers down everyone's spines. It came from the mouth of Dongfang Bubi. All those in Jiuzhou who'd still harbored fantasies could no longer remain calm. What? De Han, Lu Bang's face was grim, staring at the heavenly Dao golden list with a hint of madness and disbelief in his eyes. What was this monster? Your Majesty, shall I, old Fan, go fetch her for you? Fan Kuai scratched his head, asking cautiously as he looked at Lu Bang's gloomy expression. Silence. When Fan Kuai finished speaking, the entire hall fell silent. Find her, but you don't have to, bring her here. Hearing this, Lu Bang trembled, as if remembering something terrifying, but still managed to say, a grandmaster, I must have one. At that moment, Lu Bang felt like he was going crazy, but the desire for a grandmaster still suppressed the nausea deep in his heart. He had to get a grandmaster. Understood. Fan Kuai nodded quickly in agreement. As for Xiao He, Zhang Liang, and the others, after Lu Bang gritted his teeth and spoke those words, their expressions straightened, filled with awe. Their king truly knew how to yield and how to push forward. He was worthy of their choice. Daming, Forbidden City. We've been thinking. It seems the Ming Dynasty doesn't need a grandmaster that much, right? Zhu Yuanzhang looked at the scene in the sky, blinked, and after a long time, glanced at Zhu Di hesitantly. No matter what, we and Zhu still share blood. If things get tough, he won't just sit back and do nothing, right? Zhu Yuanzhang felt that while he loved talent, he couldn't want just anyone. If they really paid a huge price to invite Dongfang Bubi to Daming, it wouldn't be worth the trouble. Maybe, probably. Hearing this, Zhu Di's face darkened as he stared at Dongfang Bubi on the screen, confused. Who was this person? Chapter 20. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Especially that voice, not soft, not harsh, neither masculine nor feminine, just sends chills down your spine. What the heck is that? That was the thought running through everyone's minds right then and there. Dongfang Bubi's reveal was just too shocking. But after the initial shock wore off, a lot of emperors from different dynasties were still determined to get Dongfang Bubi on their side, no matter what it took. Because even if she was a little hard to look at, this person was clearly a real master. Plus, the heavenly Dao Golden List had declared, the sun rises in the east, only I am invincible. That doesn't exactly scream weakness, does it? So, looks aside, they were willing to hold their noses and deal with it. Of course, some emperors just couldn't stomach it. After wrestling with it, they didn't exactly give up, but their enthusiasm for recruiting this master definitely took a nosedive. Daqin, Zhangtai Palace, you could hear a pin drop, everyone was stunned. A gorgeous woman, gone in a blink, replaced with that. The whiplash was real. What is going on? Even Yingyun, for all his power, was floored. He looked at Dongfang Bubi and couldn't help but ask, his lip twitching. Is that a dude or a lady? Even the greatest emperor of them all was stumped. It was all because of that peerless back view that had everyone's imagination running wild, only to be this. The contrast was just too much. Plus, Yingyun realized he honestly couldn't tell if she was a man or a woman. If it was a guy, he was way too pretty. But if it was a woman, it was a little hard to buy. The before and after just didn't match up. This guy Nya was just as lost. Because, he couldn't figure it out either. You'd think that someone of his skill would be more observant than the average person, a keen observer. But even he was drawing a blank. "Young master, what's the deal?" That guy Nye's eyes darted around and he saw Yingyun standing off to the side. He couldn't resist asking, "Okay, so the ninth young master might be a little lazy." And let's be honest, his knowledge and strength weren't in the same ballpark as him or Yingzheng. Guy Nye figured he probably couldn't explain it, anyway. Still, he wanted to know what the ninth young master thought. Honestly, it was the whole Yuan Tiangang / Zhu Wuxia thing that made Guy Nye give the lazy young master a second look. He realized that even though the ninth young master liked to slack off, he had a sharp mind, and even Guy Nye had to admire it. His hunches alone were enough to blow you away. "Yeah. Yuner, what's up?" Yingzheng locked onto Yingyun, and his voice rumbled. "Tell me what you think. If you can't explain it, you're grounded for a month, no leaving the palace." Yingyun had figured it out. If you want to get your son in line, you have to be tough. Grounding and confinement were the way to go. Otherwise, the kid would be running wild in no time. "How should I know?" Yingyun rolled his eyes. Was he supposed to tell Yingzheng that Dongfang Bubi had chopped off his own junk to master the sunflower manual? He'd never believe it. And even if he did, what would he say when the Heavenly Tao Golden List revealed Dongfang Bubi's life story? Claimed to be a fortune teller. With Yuan Tiangang and Zhu Wuxia, he could at least claim to have made a close observation, but how do you closely observe a self-mutilation? If he accidentally let something slip, he'd never live it down. No way. Absolutely not. Humph, Yingzheng eyed Yingyun suspiciously, and when he shook his head, Yingzheng raised an eyebrow and huffed. Then he nodded and said, "Guess we'll wait for the Heavenly Tao Golden List to spill the beans." At this point, Yingzheng admitted he might have been pushing it. Yingyun was a little sharp, but he couldn't be expected to fully understand someone at the Grandmaster level. Still, he was relieved that Yingyun was finally getting involved, even if he was still a bit of a slacker. That way, 100 years from now, he could confidently hand over the reins of Great Qin to him. He wasn't asking for a unified 9 provinces, just that it be passed on to future generations safely. Then, when another wise ruler came along, they could slowly start gobbling up the 9 provinces, the way they swallowed up the 6 kingdoms. Boom! As Yingzheng was lost in thought, the image on the void flickered again, revealing another scene. "What's this?" That everyone in the 9 provinces was staring up in shock. The picture showed a little boy with dirt on his face and a burly man with a weathered face. What was going on? Everyone was confused. Sure, Dongfang Bubi looked and sounded a little off, but most people figured she was a woman, just a different kind of woman. But now, neither the little boy nor the rough man seemed to fit the current Dongfang Bubi. Just then, the picture shifted to a cliff. Was that Blackwood Cliff? Everyone felt a pang of recognition, then it clicked. Wasn't that where Dongfang Bubi had been? Looks like there was another martial arts sect based there, the Sun and Moon sect. And the spotlight was on the little boy and the rough man as they entered Blackwood Cliff together. At the same time, they got a rough idea of the two's relationship. The little boy was an orphan with a tragic past and no name. Just when he had lost all hope, the rough man came to his rescue, burying his parents and taking him on the road, and then they came to Blackwood Cliff, looking to join the Sun and Moon sect. The man's name was Tong Baixiong. Next, the scene changed. Tong Baixiong and the little boy joined the Sun and Moon sect. Time passed by. The little boy was a teenager now, bursting with youthful energy. He was a true young hero. But when he went out on assignment, he was ambushed, and Tong Baixiong saved him. That strengthened their bond, but the confusion in the 9 provinces only deepened. What about Dongfang Bubi? Chapter 24, Sunflower Manual. If you want to master this skill, you must castrate yourself first. Was the Heavenly Tao Golden List on the fritz? The thought crossed everyone's mind. After all, the only boy who could be Dongfang Bubi had become a young hero with a bright future, the deputy incense master of the Sun and Moon sect. He wasn't exactly a big shot yet, but he was climbing the ladder. Under normal circumstances, a young prodigy like that, if he played his cards right, would be a force to be reckoned with. And he had the backing of a martial arts sect like the Sun and Moon sect. Even with just a glimpse in the picture, everyone could tell the Sun and Moon sect was terrifyingly strong. Especially their leader, Ren Wuxing, who looked like he'd already reached the Grandmaster level. But outside of the area around Blackwood Cliff, most people in the 9 provinces were scratching their heads. If Ren Wuxing was that powerful, shouldn't he be famous across the 9 provinces? But nobody had ever heard of him. The picture shifted again. The former prodigy had come into his own and was appreciated by the Sun and Moon sects. Ren Wuxing, promoted quickly through the ranks. Eventually, he became the left envoy of light. That made him second only to the leader. That poor, helpless little boy had become a top dog in his sect, second in command, a ruler in his own right. It was all kind of incredible.